Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm a bit worn out from so many takes. I've been trying to film all night, and it just seems like I keep getting into some kind of laughing fit. And one of the main reasons why is because today I'm talking about one of my favorite types to poke fun at, and that's the ESFP. And even though I only know one confirmed friend that is definitely an ESFP unquestionably, because she had to take the test for work, so she knows firsthand that she is definitely ESFP, and I've seen enough of her to believe it. Especially comparing her with my beloved ENFP friends that I talk about so much, I can definitely see the SN difference there. So first off, let me tell you the stereotypes of the ESFP. ESFPs are known as the performers in many Myers-Brigg circles. I believe they're considered the most extroverted of the extrovert types because the literal definition of extroversion applies to them. I can think of no other extrovert type in which this applies more. They are very people-driven. To them, they will get into panic attacks if they are alone too long. ESFPs love being the center of attention. They love parties. They love huge crowds. To them, if they have to, how do I word this? If they have to just stay at home and have a nice leisurely chat with a friend, that may be okay to them. But eventually they're just giving me like, let's go out and party! Who wants to go dancing? Who wants to have a strobe light on the ceiling? Who wants to start busting some moves? And yeah, here we go. Yeah, those are the ESFPs. The people like Elvis Presley. I don't actually know what his type was, but he certainly seems like an ESFP from that alone. ESFPs are also very spontaneous, but at the same time being sensing types, they're very on-the-spot, spontaneous people. So they often don't think very far in advance. They often don't think very far behind either, because their dominant function is extroverted sensing. Unlike mine, I'm an ISTJ, if you didn't already know, I'm an introverted sensor, meaning most of my main focus in life is what I've learned via like facts, data, information. Extroverted sensing is all about the physical, concrete reality. So for instance, this notebook is physically real. Like, you can touch it, you can see it. That's their reality. For me, I have it all in my head. I don't need to show it. I don't need to feel it. You know, if I see that the sun is beautiful, I'm likely to just keep it to myself. But when an ESFP sees a beautiful sunrise, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, Paul, don't you see that sun? It's so beautiful. And look at how the rays are illuminating the leaves of the trees. And isn't it just such a gorgeous time of the year? There's a leaf pile over there. Do you want to just jump in it right now? If you've ever played the Ace Attorney games, Maya Fey is a perfect example of ESFPs. They just love having fun, and because they're spur-of-the-moment people, they're not likely to think ahead of what their actions might come across as to other people, lacking the intuition that the ENFPs have. I mean, ENFPs may be klutzy, but they at least think ahead a little bit. ESFPs don't typically think ahead at all. In fact, they're so good at living in the present that they're the most likely to simply enjoy life as it is of all of the Myers-Brigg types. So one example would be an ESFP might, for instance, they might be just in a good mood and want to make people happy. So in the case of my friend, hope she won't mind me sharing this, but in the case of my friend, sometimes she'll like peek over the cubicles of the walls of her coworkers, and most of them are like ISTJ, INTJ, and she'll start making funny faces at them without taking into account that they might want to actually take their work seriously. Or for instance, she might say like, Paul, it's such a beautiful day outside. How about I swing you around and we do Ring Around the Rosie? And people like me might be a little bit more embarrassed and like, well, not really. Because it's really hard to turn an ESFP down. Because they never have malicious intent, or at least not that I know of. If there are, please enlighten me. But to my knowledge, ESFPs never have malicious intent. They always just want to have fun. They never actively try to hurt people's feelings. They never actively try to get on people's bad sides. They just don't always see it. They're, like I said, they're not intuitives. They're sensors. They're going to take things at face value. But on the other hand, as much as I'd love to go on and on about how being perceiving types are often, go with the flow day by day type of people, typically they don't plan ahead more than like 2 days. The sensing in them also means they're very grounded in reality. I mean, if you haven't noticed enough from how much they'll point out how much they notice the sunrise. Also, when they talk, they're a lot more precise than their ENFP cousins. So, for instance, when I ask for advice from my ENFP friend, and I'll use the female one because the only ESFP that I know for sure is a female. When I call my ENFP friend and I ask her for advice, she's typically going to be very, kind of generalistic in what advice she gives. Like, she'll say, oh, everything will be okay, Paul. If you just have a glass half full attitude, everything will be totally fine. Something along those lines. My ESFP friend, on the other hand, will say, oh, Paul, you know that I care about you very much, but you have to know that these are the realistic facts and, stuff like that. But also, ESFPs are secondary introverted feelers. And that's my third function. So, in a sense, both of us tend to have a tendency to internalize our emotions. But in her case, it's more of a deciding factor in making decisions. Whereas for me, sometimes I suppress my feelings, or I tell them to shut up and go away, or it holds me back from just completely unleashing my ferocity when it comes to expressing my thoughts. For her, her introverted feeling isn't necessarily shown. She's not one of those, you can read her face to know what she's feeling. Typically when I've seen her upset over something, her face isn't likely to change. Her body language isn't likely to change. But I'll know that she's sad because of what she's saying. Being an extroverted sensor, of course, she's going to point it out. She's going to say, oh, that is so terrible. I can't believe that that's happening. But on the other hand, she's going to be practical about it. So when she gives advice, that's when the extroverted thinking, which is her tertiary function, takes over. And she'll make sure that the advice she's giving is not just saying whatever comes out of her mouth, which ESFPs tend to do on a regular basis. But when it comes to how they treat their friends, like their ENFP cousins who also have tertiary extroverted thinking, they can be surprisingly rational when they want to be. They're not totally over-emotional crybabies. No, they have a head on their shoulders and they know when to restrain themselves. So you could say the introverted feeling in them isn't necessarily that function that makes them cry over everything or always want to go by their gut feelings over logic, but they're more likely to base something off of how they happen to be feeling at that moment. So, for instance, when it comes to video games, here's a good one that you probably haven't thought of before. So, I really like Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright. If I haven't mentioned that before, that's my favorite video game ever. I love the thrill of a good debate. I love being able to examine the evidence and figure out where the contradiction lies and point it out. I also really like the logic puzzles in that game because, it's a test of my deductive reasoning abilities. She, on the other hand, has no patience. She loves me telling her about it because Maya Fey is an ESFP and she says, oh yes, I can identify with a lot of things she says there. But in terms of actually playing the game, she wouldn't even touch it. I just said, hey, you want to give Ace Attorney a try? She's like, no, I do not see the appeal in a game where people yell at each other. And she's like, I also don't see how much fun it is to point out contradictions. To her, being an extroverted sensor, that's not engaging enough. That's more like my kind of thing, where it's, factual based. Extroverted sensors are all about concrete realities. So types of video games that'll appeal to her are more likely to be games like Super Smash Brothers, where, you can mash the buttons. You can actually physically feel it. Or Skyward Sword. Stuff like that. Sitting down and thinking like that is more like my best friend is an INTJ. He thrives on those kind of games. So, I should probably discuss an ESFP's inferior function before I forget, and that would be inferior introverted intuition. Admittedly, I've studied so much on dominant introverted intuition, I may do this a bit of injustice, but from what I've observed with my friend, it seems like she's not really the type to think about overall, like, what is the ultimate goal. She's more likely to totally take things one step at a time, and she's not likely to second guess anything. So, for instance, when she reads Harry Potter, well, okay, scratch that. She's never actually gotten around to reading the books, but when she reads what other people say about Harry Potter, because I don't know if this is an ESFP thing or just my friend, but she doesn't seem to mind spoilers. And maybe that's the feeling in her really coming out, but I always say, just watch the show yourself. See for yourself what happens. She's like, oh no, I don't mind if people totally tell me the ending because I want to know who ends up with who. And so yeah, ESFPs are very much, they seem to be driven toward like romance and emotions and stuff like that. Like I said, they like making people happy, and they don't like conflict. I know I've said that about INFJs, but ESFPs really don't like conflict. To an ESFP, that's very damaging, because they take a lot of stuff personally, even more personally than the INFJ. So to sort of contrast there, when the INFJ doesn't like conflict, it's because they're trying to worry about how is this conflict going to affect the other person? Because they're extroverted feelers. They're thinking about how the other person is feeling. ESFPs, on the other hand, are going to be thinking, ow, I feel hurt by what you just said. Because they're introverted feelers. They're taking it in. They're feeling personally attacked by the conflict. And so they just prefer to stay out of it. They prefer to keep the peace. So I guess you could say inferior introverted intuition means, like I said, they don't see how one thing relates to another. So, and if they are likely to see the big picture, unlike me where I'm an extroverted intuitive, I'm sort of an out of nowhere, outside the box type of thinker. She's going to be more of an inside the box type of thinker, not necessarily thinking of these extraordinary ways to be different like the ENFP would, where they'd be like, let's make a magical wooden cabinet out of this box that'll transport us to the land of Oz. She's a little bit more realistic than that. So, the lack of intuition means that she's likely to, I guess, unlike mine, where my inferior extroverted intuition tends to reject new ideas, she doesn't like over-analysis, because she has a sister who is, we believe, an INTP, and she overanalyzes stuff all the time, and it kind of infuriates her, because she's like, oh, sheesh, you don't have to think this hard about it. She's like, just do whatever. So you could say ESFPs are very impulsive. When an ESFP feels like doing something, they typically don't think it through very much. That may not be true all the time, because I'm sure they have to think about some things. How would they get through life? But typically, for instance, when I'm walking by a pizza place, I sometimes restrain myself from getting a pizza. Because even though I love pizza, I may say, well, I don't have the money. Or, I don't know if I can carry this back to the house. Or, I should probably eat something healthier for lunch. So I'll go to the gas station instead. My ESFP friend, if she's hungry for a pizza, she'll probably go and get the pizza. Without really giving it a second thought. Because that's how she feels, and that's what she's gonna do. So because I haven't studied ESFPs as much as I have the ENFP or the ESFJ, I'm probably going to stop here because I'll mostly just be talking about my friend, but a few things that I admire about her. I won't get any dislikes if she watches this video. That very well might hurt her feelings. I don't know. I'll ask her later. But things that I enjoy about her a lot is she is almost always willing to talk on the phone. I know, I'm that weird introvert that actually really likes talking on the phone. And pretty much every time I call, she acts as though she made time for it in advance, even though it was actually just a spur of the moment phone call that she just happened to pick up. And then she makes time right then, right there, unlike me, where everything is sort of planned out in advance. Also, ESFPs never get bored if you go on random tangents. So if I decide to talk about something that was unrelated to what we were talking about before, because she's not an intuitive, she's likely to totally go for it. Also, she doesn't get annoyed if I tend to be enthusiastic about something. Because, let's face it, we introverted sensors, we know a lot, and we love telling people about what we know, because we're secondary extroverted thinkers. Once we know something, we talk about it. And there have been times where I'll talk about something I like for a really long time, then I'll say, doesn't that bore you? She's like, oh no, I love hearing about this. Because like I said, the most extroverted of the extroverts. The more people talk, the more they're around people, the happier an ESFP is going to be. Basically, if you want to make an ESFP happy, be around them a lot, bring a bunch of friends with you, and make sure there's no arguing. And you've just made an ESFP the happiest person in the world. Also, give them a lot of hugs, because typically ESFPs don't have too many personal boundaries. At least my friend doesn't. If she does, she's very specific about them. Unlike my intuitive friends, where typically they're like, I'll tell you my personal boundaries if you break them. If I say, so what don't you want me to do? She'll tell me. Being a dominant sensor, she gives a straight answer. A lot more than most of my intuitive friends, which I really admire that. I really admire people that can just get straight to the point. Also, being a perceiving type means that if I call on a random basis rather than on a normal basis, it's not something I have to apologize for. Also, it makes her very adaptable when we're hanging out, because, like I said, she's a perceiving type, I'm a judging type. I like things planned out. She, not so much. So when I hang out, she's more likely to be totally open to whatever I had in mind. Because I'll, of course, have a whole bunch of things that I want to do. And I don't even bother asking anymore, because I just figure she's just going to say, yeah, let's go for it. And then she'll do it, and she'll really enjoy it. She seems to just, as long as she's happy, having fun with people that she loves, she's good to go. So I won't make a fool of myself pretending that I know more than I do. So hope you enjoyed my personal observations on ESFPs. If you are an ESFP and like this video, please let me know. I'm not so much a fan of liking on my videos. I prefer like actual comments. So if you can do that, please do so. Don't be ashamed if you ramble, because I love hearing what people have to say, even if you vehemently disagree with everything I'm saying. Hope I can get some dialogues going. And if you aren't an ESFP, or if you know more than I do, and if I've got something wrong, please, by all means, let me know and I'll make an edit to the description. So thank you very much for watching my slightly overlong video, and until my next one, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless.